Good afternoon, and thank you for joining today's webinar, Curing Online Service Headaches with Okta. Just quickly, some housekeeping before I hand over to Toby, who will be taking us through some of the information about Bytes. So during the webinar, you are going to be muted, but you are able to submit questions in the questions box on the right-hand side of your screen. There will be a Q&A at the end of the session, so please do submit them. We will have the recording available to you after the session, and I'll send that out in due course. And please note that there is a feedback form at the end of the session, so if you could please fill that out, that would be greatly appreciated. And I'm going to hand over to Toby.
Thanks, Michael. Let me just share my screen quickly. And thanks to everyone for joining us this afternoon as well. Really appreciate your time in what I'm sure is a very busy schedule. So before I hand over to our friends at Okta, I thought I would give you a brief overview of what Bytes are all about in this space. Hopefully most or all of you on the call, I hope, have heard of Bytes, maybe familiar with some of the work we do with you. But I'm sure there are probably some that are on the call that are less familiar with what we do in the security space. Identity, of course, playing a key role in that space for us. So I will highlight a couple of bits for you. 2 seconds, let me just make sure that's not blocking the screen. There we go. So what do Bytes do in the security space? Truth is a lot, and our core offerings in this space have gone from strength to strength in the last number of years. We're now in excess of 65 plus security specialists in-house, and there are multiple facets to the business in regards to security, least of which worth pointing out, the one on the top left of the screen at the moment, our cyber consulting division, headed up by our CISO internally here. They are a team of experts that have been in the industry for decades, literally decades now, that will offer things like pen testing, security benchmarking, and various other certifications and accreditations that I can help you with in that space as well. But essentially, we've got a very strong security offering, and as I said, identity is quickly becoming a key staple of that portfolio. And this leads on to essentially Bytes. Our aim is to be a partner that you can trust, not just with your Microsoft licensing, for example, as I'm sure a lot of you will deal with us on, but in the security space as well. With regards to the accreditations, the team I mentioned before, the cyber consulting division, they're CREST and CHECK certified. We adhere to ISO standards and Cyber Essentials. Remember the ISF security forum as well, which is a great tick in the box. When it comes to solutions, we're very proud to consistently win partner awards on all of our top vendors. Of course, we're here to hear from Okta today. So it's with great delight that I can announce that this year we've won 2 key partner awards. First of which earlier in the year was EMEA Partner of the Year, followed more recently by UK and Ireland Partner of the Year as well, on top of the same that we won last year, which is really good to see. So it's a very consistent relationship there. I've had the pleasure of working with Okta for the last coming up to 3 years now, and kind of seeing our partnership here at Bytes with them going strength to strength. So really the aim of today is to address the concern of kind of online services within your industry, and to hear from our friends over at Okta about how they can help tackle some of those challenges. And this slide kind of highlights some of what I've covered already, but I'd really like to emphasize the bottom left there, that vendor relationship, particularly with Okta. We're a great go-to partner for them in the UK, and they've been a fantastic staple for our identity offering out to you, our customers, and how we help tackle some of those key challenges in the identity space. So that's enough from me. I'm going to hand over to Jeremy now from Okta, who's going to kick things off for us. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you. So All right, James, you want to start that?
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to have you all on the call, and thanks very much for joining. And hopefully we're going to give you a great overview of customer identity and access management here. But first of all, let's introduce ourselves, and thank you, Toby, for that introduction as well. Let's introduce ourselves. If we go to the next slide, as you can see here, I am James Richmond. I am the Alliances Solutions Engineer for UK and Ireland, and I am here joined by Jeremy himself. If you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Jeremy Durant, Alliances Solutions Engineer for a bit more than a year at Okta.
The aim of today's call is to give you a general overview of what customer identity is, how Okta can provide you those solutions, looking at a number of use cases that it aims to solve for you in your organizations. And at the end, we'll also be giving you a demonstration of a number of the primary use cases that you can use our customer identity platform for within your organizations. So it's just a general overview of who we are, what we'll be showing you today, and I guess we'll be just jumping in now as to what Okta actually does, the solutions that it has, and what we'll be focusing on today. So as you can see right now, Okta does or has a number of different platform services. Now, all of these platform services come together to construct the solutions found within our wide portfolio. Now, our wide portfolio does consist of two main key areas, which you'll see in a second. And within these, we have our workforce identity and we have our customer identity. Now, we will be primarily focusing on customer identity today, but to give you an idea of the other areas we also focus on, and we are also having another webinar on this workforce identity piece later on this week on Friday at 10 a.m. So if it is something you are interested in hearing about, that is another webinar that Bytes are hosting and I will be attending on Friday this week. But of course, the number of different solutions that we have within our portfolio are focused in on these two main key areas. So first of all, the workforce identity is looking at that single sign-on experience, providing that centralized source of information, that universal directory, as well as a number of other solutions in there which allow you to have a secondary factor authentication, the adaptive MFA, for instance, the lifecycle management, allowing you to provision and deprovision or completely tick off that JML process. But that's before we come into the customer identity, which is what we'll be focusing on today. Now, the customer identity piece, we'll be focusing on four main pillars, and we'll be going into a bit more detail on that later, or shall I say Jeremy will be. Within these, or the main ones we'll be showing you today, include the authentication and authorization piece, so showing you how we can meet industry standards for allowing your customer base to sign in securely and for you to be able to manage the data that they actually held on themselves within your application itself. Now, to give you a bit more detail on this, I'm going to pass over to Jeremy, who's going to give you a more in-depth overview of what customer identity is, what Okta does in that area, and the use cases we'll be covering off today.
Thanks, James. That's good stuff. Thank you. So before we get into details, let's give a definition for CIAM, for Customer and Identity Access Management. So what is CIAM? Here we talk about websites, mobile applications, devices, in general, services offered to the customer or consumer. And these customers, they need to have access. The second part of this definition mentions that compared to IAM, CIAM means that the consumers manage their own accounts and profile data. And we will see that this is important as it brings new challenges. Let's now look at the markets. First, customers, they expect the best. If your user experience is bad, customers won't stay. As we can see, 71% of customers won't sign in if they face friction. Second, building identity is hard and maintaining it even harder. 93% of application vulnerabilities comes from this failure in custom code. We will talk about that with a bit more details in a bit. Third point, as an organization, you move to the clouds, you move from old systems to more modern approaches. There is a lot of money being spent in this digital transformation. Fourth, as consumers use their mobile more and more to access services, here you also need to offer access on multi-channels. Last point, just to confirm all of that, all the inquiries that Gartner gets, 60% are related to SIAM, so it's not nothing. SIAM is present in a lot of different initiatives that you could have within your organization. Again, you are planning into building a new mobile app, or you want to streamline your customer portals. You have new security functionalities that need to be put into place. You might want to improve on your B2B, or maybe this is just a project regarding compliance. All of that could be related to your customer, and you might need a SIAM, and that could be a SIAM use case. SIAM use case, what are these key use cases? It could be regarding business collaboration. Here we talk about, for example, partners of yours that need to have access to your internal resources. For that, you might have a portal that these external identities can access. Again, access that creates a use case. Consumers, this is what we've been mainly talking about. An organization is providing service via mobile or a web app. Think about a loyalty program or, for example, online shopping. There you want to have a secure authentication and also without friction. As an organization, if you, that's my third point, if you build applications, you are most probably also building APIs. Okta can help you as an organization to manage the access to these APIs or how they are being built and architectured nowadays as microservices. So to protect this microservices. Right, so now I hope you understand a bit more about the use cases that we've just talked about. Let's just take an example on why a SIAM solution is needed. It was one of our points in the slides where building identity is complex. So your organization, let's just imagine for a second, you want to start offering new services via a mobile app. These services, they need to be available for the current customer base, but can also be open for new registration. In any case, the customer needs to have access. So you start making a list of requirements. Again, it needs to be secure and without friction. And at a certain point, you will realize that building identity is not easy. There is actually more than just a simple login and password form. So from a security point of view, you need to check for code injection, secure the passwords, check for common passwords, for example. From a user friction perspective or a user experience perspective, you want to allow the user to reset the password, him or herself. You want to let the user to be able to do that. Or have a pleasant registration flow, just a simple form, first name, last name, email, and that's it. Maybe you want to leverage a social login, and that will also bring some other challenges. So these are only a few examples, and I'm not even talking about integrating multi-factor authentication here. The message here with this example is spend your time building your product, not your authentication. In the end, what you want is to provide the service that represents your business on a platform. And in that journey, building authentication should not get in the way. A few references to to talk a bit more on that. So if you want to do some design on Photoshop, you need to authenticate in the Adobe Creative Cloud. Also, if you want to book a flight, you will authenticate at Emirates. Another good example is the MGM, where you want to book a room at maybe at the MGM Grand, at the Bellagio. These are from the all these hotels are from the same organization. You need to authenticate. They actually have a specific use case where you need to authenticate only once to one of these websites, so the Grand, or the Bellagio, and then you have an SSO experience across all their websites. If you have an account, you should try it yourself. So it is just to say that these organizations, they provide a specific service and they use Okta for their authentication. So they delegate the whole authentication to us. Then also a good use case, the Major League Baseball. Of course, they work with seasons when there are more matches, so they need also to be scalable. Probably during the season, there will be more authentication. Okta is capable of scaling with your business. So it could be that there are other kinds of initiatives. Just like I mentioned, build a scalable app with a Major League Baseball. It could be that you need to integrate with other apps. Think about a CRM system for your B2B. You organize all your partners into your CRM system and you want to have this integration because the users are stored in this CRM system and they need to have access to your portal. Protect against account takeover. We'll talk about it a bit more in a bit with multi-factor authentication. It could be that you need to integrate enterprise identities or secure your APIs. Again, something that we are going to talk about in a bit. So at the start of this presentation, James introduced the Okta Identity Clouds and the different platform services and products, mentioned the 4 pillars. So here we are. How will Okta support you from a product perspective on your next use case? Based on a few examples, we are going to talk about Universal Directory, which is the one place to manage all your user and groups. We'll talk about Adaptive MFA, which brings multi-factor authentication based on contextual access. We'll talk about Inbound Federation, so using Okta as a service provider. And lastly, API Access Management to secure your APIs. So Universal Directory. In this example, here we want to give access to application based on the user profile in the CRM system. So we have a user synced with the CRM system. Also in this integration, attributes can be synced. So we could have here agent number synced from the CRM system into Universal Directory. In Okta, the user is automatically assigned to the group agents, and that will give then James Bond access to the agent portal. This is the kind of the automation integration that you can put in place. And also attribute mapping. Another Universal Directory example, Universal Directory, we most of the time call it UD. We have mapped attributes between UD and the application. That way we are able to keep the username classified and send the license based on the agent number. So you can see here the Universal Directory profile and the application user profile and the mapping between these two. Why is this use case important? Like we mentioned earlier, you can have some initiatives about compliance. And this can be done with the Okta expression language. Multi-factor, different kinds of factor. Here, of course, we talk about extra security on top of your authentication. we of course, so if we talk about that, we of course need to talk about multi-factor authentication. There are a couple of factors that we see in B2B and B2C. As an organization, you might need one of these factors. Email, what Okta can support is email one-time codes. This is a code sent to the customer email with a code so that the owner of the mailbox can verify his or her identity. Same with SMS. We can integrate with a TOTP generator app. The most secure at the moment is WebAuthn, so it's leveraging fingerprints, it's leveraging biometry, so it could be your fingerprints or facial recognition in order to authenticate. This would actually, WebAuthn could actually unlock passwordless experience. And then if we talk a bit more about the roadmap with the identity engine, we talk about two other factors, email magic link. So again, an email is being sent to the customer, to the user, and from the email, click on the button will automatically log in the user. The last one is Okta Verify Push SDK. So it's bringing Okta Verify into a SDK format so that you can integrate it into your own branded app. Right. So that's only MFA, multi-factor authentication. Now we want to have the adaptive. We want to add the adaptive part of the multi-factor authentication. So here, based on the context, we calculate the risk level and decide to take action. What's that context? The context can be based on the network, a new IP, specific IP zones that you would want to define as an organization. It could be a device context, a known device, managed, registered, secure. Also with third-party integrations, we could introduce device trust into that equation. It could be location context, new city, states, if you are not of the sudden logging in from somewhere else. Or the impossible travel, if I log in at a certain time in London and a minute later I log in from Paris, that's odd, that's humanly impossible. So we could be able to detect that. So we fine-tune our access policies with that context, and we can decide to allow or deny the access, or maybe we just instead of denying, we want to prompt for a second factor and just verify that it's the right person, it's the right user. API access management, or OAuth as a service. I'm going to repeat a bit myself, but again, in this modern world, and you as an organization, you are probably building applications, a mobile app, and if you are building this mobile app, you are probably building that on top of APIs. So you're also probably building these APIs. With API access management, you can secure your apps and your APIs. You can use Okta as a authorization server. The application will receive the application will use Okta as an authorization server. Then the application will receive a scope with an identity token or an access token that can be used to authorize access to different resources. So this can support multiple use cases, addressing different client capabilities and deployment models. And no worries, we are going to see one example in a bit with the demo, so that will probably become a bit more clear. Why is it important to think about API access management when building your APIs? Of course, the security aspect, that's the first point. Here we leverage Okta's UD and the user profile, and we create access policies with that. Okta is, second point mentions that Okta is backed with APIs, so existing provisioning, integrations, etc. All of that works out of the box. You can provision APIs as easily as you provision applications. And of course, you can you make sure that your developer, or if you are a developer, you can implement the right security measure with the standards. So Okta offers the standards out of the box, like OpenID Connect and also OAuth. So to summarize, and also to answer the question, why would you choose Okta for a SIAM use case? Okta is a cloud-based secure identity service that unlocks innovation by delivering frictionless experience to users. It will dramatically improve speed to markets, centralizing identity management, and improving security. If you want to know more, please visit Developeroctacom. It is not only for developer, no worries. You don't need to code to be able to read techie stuff. There you will find a lot of contents, blog articles, and resources that are sure relevant to your business. So with that, we'll go on with the demo. James, you share your screen.
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for that, Jeremy. It was fantastic. So let me just share my screen out. So you should be able to see a gov.uk site, something quite familiar to us all in regards to having visited the government website probably quite frequently in the last few months with everything that's going on and wanted to find out information about things that are going on in the crisis we're in. But not only that, we also use the government website for potentially tracking things such as our tax, or maybe looking at further details around ourselves, or even submitting a tax return. But of course, it doesn't just end there with the government website. They also have our local councils where we would sign in, pay our council tax, potentially report any problems that we have had in our local community. So in the demonstration we're going to see today, we are basing this around something that happens to us all at some point in our life, where we need to get in contact with our local council or potentially with the government to submit some sort of ticket that we have a problem with in our local community. But we're not just going to finish there. We're also going to show you how we can integrate with a site like this. So you can see right now we're looking at a gov.uk website. We can show you how we can seamlessly integrate Okta with it, providing that authentication and that authorization service via a number of different means. So the first use case we'll be looking at today is how we can complete a self-service registration. I'm new to the community. Maybe I've only just turned 18 and I need to obtain some information from the government website, or maybe I need to look into the tax I've currently been paying. So those are the first few things we're going to look at. Self-service registration. We're then going to look at other pieces that we can integrate with externally via our gov.uk website, such as an on-FIDO external identity checker. So by doing this, we can verify our own identity by the information that we stored within our profile. And as Jeremy mentioned earlier, all of this information that is stored on my profile when I do this self-service registration in a minute or so's time is all stored within Okta's universal directory. And when I authenticate onto this particular website, we'll be authenticating against that profile inside our Okta portfolio as well. Now, we are going to cover off a few other things within this demonstration too. So you've heard me say about a verification check. You've heard me say about a self-service registration. We'll also be creating a ticket around an issue that I'm facing in my local community, and it needs to be actioned by someone else who works for the gov.uk organization. In this case, that's when I'll be passing it over to Jeremy, and Jeremy will be completing a number of other actions, which he'll give to you in a bit more detail around, such as the delegated access and being able to comment on the actual ticket that I have created previously. Now, as I said earlier, I'm going to go through a self-service based approach. As a customer, the difference between SIAM and IAM is that I'm a user, and as a customer, I am going to manage my own data. An organization is not going to do it for me. I am in complete control of that. So by doing so, we're just going to start now within the gov.uk website, and you'll see here we have the ability to complete a self-service registration or creating my own account, as you can see here. Now, I am going to associate an email address with this, but what you also see a bit later on is that we also have a customer reference number also associated with our account stored in the universal directory. This will become a little bit more relevant later on as to what this is for, but what you'll see right now is I'm going to create an account, and based on the password, what we also have going on in the background is haveibeenpwned.com is being used to check the password that I actually provide. And through this integration, we can ensure that my password is not one that's been compromised in the past, or maybe my details haven't been compromised in the past. And if they have, we have the ability to have that adaptive MFA in place to require me to provide a code via a one-time passcode via email. Now, I'm just going to provide some details around my date of birth, because this is going to become a bit more relevant later on. But once I've created an account or completed this self-service registration, what you'll see here is, and this account will become a bit more clearer later when Jeremy uses that, I've used my jimmy.richmond@richscoops.com email address. We're now going to be presented with a screen, as you can see in front of us. Now, there are a number of options shown to us on this portal. The first of which is viewing our tokens. Jeremy will give you a bit more detail later. Essentially, our tokens are around the ID token and the access token. Jeremy will give you more detail later on how this can be manipulated using the SIAM piece within Okta. And the use case we'll be showing is how we can use that delegation approach as well. Something also to keep an eye on, which you'll see a bit later on, a difference between my access token and Jeremy's, is the LOA, so the level of access. Now, the level of access is manipulated and changed via the on-FIDO external identity checker that I'll take you through in a second. Essentially, this is how we can provide levels of control or access to our users within the SIAM piece. Now, when we return to our portal, what you'll also see, the next stage of my verification process is to provide the information around myself as a user so I can actually have my identity checked. Now, I'm just going to sign in again by going back. I've been checked out. Let's do that again. So when I sign here, we're presented that same portal screen. This is when I can go to manage the information on myself, so then I can complete that verification of my identity in the next stage. So just changing this information here, we can give my name. So I'm just going to give my nickname there. We'll add that in. And this is not actually checking correct data against myself, but it's to prove a concept here as to what you could implement against our SIAM solution. So just providing a false address. Providing a random postcode there. And when we've completed those details, what you'll see in a second is we're now able to complete that verification check on ourselves, prove who we are, so then we can complete some further actions within the government portal. So when we go to verify our identity, what we'll see here is this is where we have that LOA. So we can have that level of access and basically have a status there around whether we're self-asserted. And as you saw before, I had an LOA 0, but now because I've added that information on myself within my profile, which as we said before, the difference between SIAM and the IAM piece is that I am in control of that data that's stored on me within the universal directory rather than my organization. And as you can see here, we're using the on-FIDO external service to provide that check on my identity via the information that I've given myself within my profile. So if I start in that identity verification, you'll see in here that I've passed that, the result is clear. It's said that I'm basically alive, that my date of birth is correct, and the address that I'm living at is correct against the system. So by doing so, we can complete some further actions on my actual profile. So you saw earlier, I said about the next use case we're going to be looking at is around tickets. As a resident in my local community, there will always be at some point in my life a time when I'm going to have to either submit a ticket or get in contact with the local council about something to report either a problem or maybe inquire about something, a service that has been completed recently. Now, this is where we can integrate with certain ticket systems within our portal, as you can see here, the Gov.uk website. So I'm simply just going to go through the process of creating a ticket, and then afterwards we're going to show you some other features within the customer identity piece, such as being able to have that delegated authority. Now, the delegated authority, which I'll be showing you today, is how I can give Jeremy the access to my account so he can either make changes to my profile or essentially act on my behalf. Now, we're just going to go ahead and create a ticket. Within this ticket, I'm simply just going to provide some data. These are a ticket is essentially short-lived. It's not going to last very long, so we'll create it. And if Jeremy gets to it and it's not there, then I will create another one so we can show you how this can work. But essentially, I can add in here wrong council tax, payment value, and that can essentially start the process of someone investigating that problem that I have simply registered here. I know it's not a complex form, but it's to prove a concept rather than actually what you can do. Now, once I've created that ticket, I will go back to my profile and I can have as many of these tickets as I want. You can see here I can comment on myself, but to give Jeremy access to do that, I now need to go and add him as a delegated authority. So when we go to the delegated authority, I can enable this. So when I go to enable, what we'll see here is I can enable people to act on my behalf. So here's the details for my account, my customer reference number, as I mentioned earlier, which I can also authenticate into our universal directory with. When I return to the delegated authority, now I've enabled it, you will see here I have the ability to add as many delegates as I require. In this case, I'm simply going to add Jeremy's. And when I've added Jeremy, when Jeremy goes into the next part of the demonstration, he will show you how he can actually act on my behalf, make changes to the tickets, and make any changes to my information stored on my profile. So that's where I pass over to Jeremy. Jeremy's going to show you the next part of the demo where he can show that delegated authority and how he can act on my behalf and make comments on the tickets that I have created so far.
Thanks, Jim. So continuing on this demo, I will also log in on the website. This time, as James mentioned, I will use this reference number, and then I will enter my password. So first thing is to view the token. You can see that for now, as an access token, I have my own customer number. I am the subject, and this is being handed over to the application, so I can perform actions based on that customer number. I go back. I want to, as James mentioned, exercise the delegated authority. So click on Start Now. In the list, I have access to Jimmy's profile, continue. And normally I should now, if I click on Manage Tickets, I'm capable of seeing the tickets that James created. Can I even comment on that? We will fix that. Right, why is that possible? If I go back and I view the token again, at the moment I started exercising my delegated authorization, the Okta as an authorization server handed over a new access token, this time containing the customer number of James. So basically the initiative here is that the application will not handle the authentication anymore, but it will be delegated to Okta with all the possibilities out of the box. To prove that the logged in user is the correct user, the application will need and will get the JSON web token, and more specifically the ID token. Here, Okta also acts as the authorization server, handing out, again, JSON web token, but most commonly access tokens to the application, which can solution the use case that you have just seen. So with that, that's the end of the demo. I think I'm handing it back to Toby.
Thanks very much, Jeremy, and thank you, James, as well. So, guys, we're approaching the end of the session today. We've got time for a Q&A. You should have access to the Q&A box on the webinar. Do feel free to submit those, and as Michael said at the beginning, there will also be a feedback form followed shortly after this. If you could kindly follow up with that, that would be ideal. And I think actually, James and Jeremy, we've got a couple of questions to get us started. So I will start with the first one we've had through. Can you utilize things like users' personal email address or social logins? Assume by that they mean things like Facebook and logins and various other ways of signing in. Who wants to tackle that one?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So yeah, of course, consumers, customers, they will log in with their own email address. So out of the box, you can get a with Okta, you can offer the user a form that's that can be filled in order to register. So yes, second part of the question is about social auth, and we've talked about it quickly with this example, right, with the Facebook login. Of course, you don't want to only leverage Facebook, you want to leverage any kinds of like Google, if you are building something more corporate, you want to be, or LinkedIn, as they both also offer this social auth. So yeah, you can integrate them out of the box, so they will become your identity provider for your service, integrated with Okta. And that's, I mean, that's a great use case. Definitely, it gives the user a better experience because you will not need to go through the registration. You just are reusing the password that you already have. So so you don't need to do that. So yeah, that's great for the user experience.
Perfect. Thanks, Jeremy. Next up, we have, can you integrate this into CRM systems such as Dynamics 365 or Salesforce?
Yeah, so I will also pick up that one. Yeah, great. I guess this question comes because of the what we've talked about with UD. Yeah, there are a couple of. I would invite you to go check the Okta integration networks, and whatever CRM you are using, check if it can be integrated. Salesforce, I'm sure, exists, so you could create this synchronization between Okta and Salesforce. For Dynamic 365, of course, for also the Office 365 suite. Yeah, well, all of these applications, what is behind is Azure AD. So you could integrate this Azure AD also as an IDP and offer the user to log in with his or her Azure AD account, Office 365 accounts. Then you provision that profile from Azure AD to into Okta, and also with attribute mapping, you can also enrich the current profile of the user. So yeah, I believe there are definitely some possibilities here.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I've got one last one at the moment. And that is, what would be the next step if I have a project like what was being discussed today? Where do I start? Where do I begin?
I'm happy to jump in this one if you want, Jeremy. So the next steps, in terms of if you would like to see more, we are more than happy to give a more personal demonstration for any use cases you'd like to see in that area. So if it is something of interest, we'd be happy to do a more personable experience with you in another demonstration, or potentially looking at any use cases, or even having a discussion around what your challenges currently are, how we could possibly provide you solutions to that. So please get in contact. I'm sure, Toby, you've got some contact details there for anybody to reach out to. And of course, if you would like any further information, we are more than happy for you to get in touch, either email myself, james.richmond@okta.com, or please get in touch with any of the Bytes guys who can then point you in the right direction as to who can help you with those next stages.
Yeah, I think I'd add on to that as well. Anyone that does want to get in touch, you've got the Tell Me More at bytes.co.uk on the screen at the moment. Obviously, feel free to reach out to your account manager as well, or myself, toby.noble@bytes.co.uk. More than happy to help. Do we have any other questions? Let's have a quick look. I think that might be it for now. But if anyone does think of something later in the day, thought, oh, I should have asked that question, as we say, do feel free to reach out to ourselves. We'd be more than happy to pick up a further conversation on this. And thank you again very much for your time. And thanks, James and Jeremy, for presenting for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.